On the 1st of September, there was the official launch of the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi Foundation. I was invited to speak under one of the items on the digitization of the records of Nkosi Buthelezi, or I will call him Ushenge, which is his praise name. As every Zulu has a praise name, and it's a most beautiful thing. I had a very short time to speak because they had a very busy program, and it was a very important event because it's vital that there is such a foundation, and it will have premises and offices on the Durban Point beachfront. What I could say was very limited. So I'd like to say a little bit more detail of what I had prepared to say. A man called Jack Simons, who was a lecturer at the University of Cape Town. He was my lecturer in comparative African government law and traditional law, who's revered by all the communists and lectured in the ANC camps. But I always remember one sentence which he told the class. He said to us, "Students, you must remember, if you don't have a history, you can always make one." And that's what has been happening in our province. And I believed it was very important that there should be a complete and full digitized secure record of Chief Buthelezi's archive. It's a very big archive, and it tells the truth about what was happening in KwaZulu-Natal. Jack Simons was an ultimate Marxist-Leninist, and the man who was his supporter and follower was Michael Sutcliffe, Professor Michael Sutcliffe. He decided to remake the history, change all the names. Any communist is a liar, a deceiver, and a bluffer. And Michael Sutcliffe was a good example. The second communist that I met was Harry Gwala. I met him in the Weenan Town Hall when the violence was erupting in Bruntville and Wembezi. I was on the peace committee for Escort Wembezi. I knew what was happening on the ground. Harry Gwala was an atheist, a hater of God. He detested anybody who wouldn't support the revolution. He would support necklacing, making the townships ungovernable. And who was helping him? Zwelium Keys, J.J. Jeffrey, Yunus Karim, the late Ruth Bengo, and Blade Nzimande, all communists spreading violence in the Midlands of Natal. The third communist that I encountered was in Parliament, when I took, for the third time in Parliament, my oath of office, when I stood before the Chief Justice of South Africa to take the oath as a member of Parliament to uphold our Constitution. Who is standing next to me? Because we went up in groups. There were a lot of us taking the oath. So in this group that went up, on my left was a man from KwaZulu-Natal, an ANC supporter. I knew him because I'd been president of Kwanalu and interacted with him, and he was a politician in our province. I joked with him. I said, "Yeah, today we new boys here, Msila." And I also used his Takazela. Who was that man? It was Jacob Zuma. He stood next to me, taking the solemn oath before God and lying. Any communist is born to lie and trained to lie. And Jacob Zuma was there. Jacob Zuma, I didn't use his Takazela, because a Takazela is such a beautiful Zulu cultural tradition. Any Zulu with a Takazela doesn't need Black Lives Matters nonsense. They have dignity and respect. I would not use Zuma's Takazela ever again, because he's a disgrace to the Zuma clan, a disgrace to the Zulu nation, a disgrace to all the women of South Africa with his promiscuous lechery. He's in fact a disgrace to the human race, and he stood next to me taking an oath. In fact, now, if I want to have a catharsis, I say to my friends, when I need to go to the toilet, I'm going to send a fax to Jacob Zuma. UZuma, 40, samabhinga, uhamba nokuloya, nokubula, nomthakathi, nomuthi, nezinyanga. UZuma samaqaba. He also and Gwala despised Albert Luthuli. They didn't like his Christianity. Albert Luthuli was not into revolution, and for these communists, revolution matters. That's why they'll necklace people and act like Harry Gwala. But there's also a fourth group of people around who I like to compare to Lenin's alleged calling of a people known as useful idiots. I prefer to call them useful mamparas. But don't think all these people are mamparas. And their best example recently in South Africa was in September last year, when concerned citizens wrote an open letter criticizing the IRR, which is an old, honest, fact-based NGO. And they were criticizing it because they could see that the IRR was exposing, as John Cain Berman, the late John Cain Berman did, the lies of the communist agenda for South Africa. Now, those guys are what I call useful mamparas, but they're not all mamparas. A lot of them are very sharp. They have an agenda, and what is that agenda essentially? It's a woke, left-wing, Marxist cultural agenda. And who's one of the chief mamparas? I call him the Boere Mampara, is Adriaan Basson, the editor of News 24. Just before this meeting, the week before in City Press, there's a headline: Buthelezi mass murderer. Who writes it? Mondli Makhanya. Mondli Makhanya was one of Gwala's Qabanis, causing trouble. And so the propaganda goes against Ushenge. And that's why I did my best to ensure that we found the money and pushed forward the digitization of all his records. Mondli Makhanya would have loved to have just thrown a petrol bomb and a match into those records. I should also mention that it's wonderful to be here with old IFP colleagues who were in Parliament with me, but they know I've never voted for the IFP, and I've never been a member of the IFP, but I value what they do and their service they provide to our country enormously.